When the humans first received the spaceship, everyone laughed. The aliens who handed it over didn't think humans stood a chance. The ship was a mess, broken parts, rusted metal, and old technology that barely worked. To the galaxy's most advanced races, this ship wasn't even worth looking at. It was a joke. But they didn't know what humans were capable of. Earth had never been a powerhouse in space. For centuries, humans were seen as weak, small, and insignificant compared to the other races of the galaxy. But when war broke out between the major alien factions, the humans were forced into the fight. They didn't have the fancy weapons or advanced technology the others had. All they had was their willpower and their strange ability to make the best out of any bad situation. The ship they were given was a test, a way for the aliens to show the humans they didn't belong in the war. The ship had no shield, no weapons, and barely enough power to get to the next planet. But the humans didn't care. They set to work right away, fixing it however they could. With only their basic knowledge of technology and a little luck, they began to make it run at first. It didn't seem to change much. The ship still looked like junk. The engine sputtered, the lights flickered, and the hull was covered in dents. But when they took it into battle for the first time, something strange happened. The first alien fleet they faced was a group of heavily armed ships from the Zoreth Empire. The humans should have been destroyed within minutes, but instead, something unusual occurred. The ship seemed to know exactly how to dodge every attack. It moved in ways that didn't make sense. A ship that should have been slow and clumsy was weaving through enemy fire like it had a mind of its own. The Zoreth fleet didn't know what to make of it. They had never seen anything like this. The human ship, which was supposed to be an easy target, was outmaneuvering them at every turn. Then, to everyone's shock, the ship launched an attack. It fired a weapon that wasn't even part of the ship's design. The blast hit the lead Zoreth ship, and it exploded. The rest of the fleet scattered, unsure of what just happened. The humans couldn't believe it. Their ship, which had no real weapons, had just taken down a whole enemy fleet. It didn't make sense. They had only one theory. Maybe, just maybe, the ship wasn't as useless as they thought. There was something hidden in it, something no one understood. The next few battles were no different. The ship kept surprising them. Each time they faced a new enemy, the ship adapted. It learned how to fight, how to dodge, and how to strike back. The humans had no idea how or why this was happening, but it was working. Their ship, which had been nothing but scrap metal, had become a weapon no one could ignore. The rest of the galaxy began to take notice. The Zoreth Empire was just the beginning. Soon, the humans were fighting the Korans, the Sindar, and the Kralax, all powerful races that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. One by one, they fell. Their ships were no match for the humans' junk spaceship. What puzzled everyone, though, was that the humans didn't seem to be doing anything special. There were no new technologies, no weapons. Just a bunch of humans in a broken-down ship winning battles they had no business winning. It was as if the ship itself was alive, changing and evolving with every fight. The humans didn't know what was happening, but they were beginning to believe they were no longer in control. The ship was... There were whispers across the galaxy. What was happening to the humans? How could they be so successful with such a worthless ship? And what was even more terrifying, why hadn't anyone been able to stop them? It wasn't just the ship that was causing fear, it was the humans behind it. They had become the most dangerous force in the galaxy, and they were growing stronger with every victory. The humans, however, were just as confused as their enemies. They had never asked for this power. They never intended to become a galactic threat. They were just trying to survive. But with each battle, they realized they weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something much bigger. The ship had given them more than just a weapon, it had given them purpose. Soon, it became clear that the ship was more than just a piece of junk. It was a part of something bigger, something that no one could fully understand. It had been designed with a purpose the galaxy wasn't ready to face. The humans had unlocked something ancient and powerful, and now they had to decide what to do with it. Could they control the power of their ship, or would it control them? No one knew. But one thing was certain, the humans were no longer the underdogs. They were the ones to fear. The galaxy had made a mistake when they handed the humans their junk spaceship. They never expected it to work. They never expected the humans to fight back. But now, the galaxy would have to reckon with what they had created. And the humans? They were just getting started. The galaxy's most powerful races watched Earth with amusement. The humans, still new to space travel, had just been given their first spaceship. But it wasn't just any spaceship, it was a broken-down hulk of metal, full of holes and missing parts. No one believed humans had a chance to survive in space, let alone win a battle. The alien species laughed, thinking they had gifted Earth a ship that was good for nothing but scrap. Captain Sarah Green stood at the bridge of the so-called junk ship. Her crew of human soldiers stared at the screens, unsure whether to laugh or cry. The ship was nothing like the sleek, advanced warships they'd heard about in stories. It was loud, clunky, and barely held together. But Captain Green wasn't about to give up. The ship may have been a joke to the aliens, but to her and her crew, it was their lifeline. "We can do this," she said, her voice steady, though inside, she too felt the weight of doubt. "We'll make it work, one way or another." With no choice but to make the most of it, Sarah's team got to work, patching up the ship with whatever parts they could find. The ship had been abandoned in space for years, its systems old and malfunctioning. But Sarah saw something no one else did a chance. As the crew worked tirelessly, they discovered something strange. The ship, though broken and ragged, seemed to respond to their efforts in ways they couldn't explain. As if it had a life of its own. First, it was small things. The ship's engines, which had been barely functional, began to run smoother. The old weapon systems, once dead, suddenly came to life. Sarah and her crew were still unsure how it was happening, but they weren't about to waste the opportunity. They quickly realized that there was something hidden deep within the ship, something far more powerful than they had imagined. Word quickly spread through the galaxy that humans had somehow managed to fix their junk spaceship and were preparing for battle. The alien forces, still thinking the humans were no threat, barely paid attention. But soon, they would regret their arrogance. The first real test came when the humans were ambushed by a powerful alien warship fleet. They'd been tracking Sarah's ship, waiting for the moment to strike. They didn't expect the humans to last more than a few minutes. But as the battle began, it became clear that something was wrong. The junk ship wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back. Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief as the ship's old weapon systems began firing with deadly accuracy. The alien ships, once confident in their superiority, began to fall one by one. Their shields flickered and failed, their engines exploded, and their crews were left scrambling in panic. Sarah didn't know how it was happening, but she wasn't about to stop it. "Hold the line," she ordered, her voice calm but commanding. Her crew followed her lead, trusting her completely. The ship's battered exterior made it harder for the aliens to target it, and its unpredictable movements made it nearly impossible to catch. The junk ship was using its weaknesses to its advantage. It was the perfect predator. The battle raged on for hours, but the humans didn't stop. They didn't know what they were dealing with, but they trusted the ship and each other. And slowly but surely, they began to win. The once feared alien fleet was being destroyed, piece by piece. By the time the battle ended, the junk ship had decimated the entire fleet. The surviving aliens fled, leaving behind nothing but wreckage. It was a victory no one had expected. Not the aliens, not the humans, and not even Sarah. She stood on the bridge, staring at the screen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The ship, though still scarred and old, had proven itself. But the question that haunted her and would haunt the galaxy was, how? The word spread like wildfire. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken a broken ship, a ship meant for scrap, and turned it into the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. The once ridiculed humans had become a force to be reckoned with. But the real mystery remained. No one could figure out what had made the ship so powerful. Was it the human spirit, their determination to survive, or was there something more? Some began to whisper that the ship wasn't just an old warship. It was something far older, something alien in nature, with a mind of its own. Others believed that the ship's strange power came from an ancient artifact hidden deep within its structure. Whatever it was, the galaxy could no longer ignore the humans. The humans prepared for their next mission. They knew the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The once laughable junk ship had turned into the most feared vessel in existence. And the humans, once thought weak and powerless, had just won their first real victory. But what would happen next? No one knew. The only thing they were sure of was that the galaxy had underestimated them, and they wouldn't make that mistake again. The last laugh was theirs. And it was only the beginning. The humans had been given a spaceship, but it wasn't like anything they had imagined. It was old, rusty, and barely held together. The alien race that had gifted it to Earth thought it would be a joke. A broken-down relic from a forgotten time. They laughed at the humans, believing the ship would never survive in space. To them, it was nothing more than a useless piece of junk. Captain James Carter stood at the helm of the ship, staring out at the vast expanse of space. He tried not to let the sinking feeling in his stomach show. His crew was small, and their ship was falling apart. Yet, there was something in the air, a strange sense of determination. James didn't know what it was, but he could feel it. This ship, no matter how broken, had potential. The crew worked to make repairs. Something strange began to happen. The ship seemed to respond. Its engines, which had sputtered and groaned when they first started, now hummed with power. The weapons, long dormant, flickered to life. And the ship's sensors, originally malfunctioning, suddenly began to work perfectly. James and his crew didn't know it yet, but the ship was changing, evolving. Days passed, and the humans grew bolder. They had no choice but to venture deeper into space. They couldn't stay on Earth forever. And with the galaxy's most powerful races watching, waiting for them to fail, the humans knew they had to prove themselves. But how? Their ship was still a joke to the aliens. No one expected them to last long. Then, the unexpected happened. As they navigated through a dangerous asteroid field, a fleet of alien warships appeared on the horizon. They were massive, much bigger than anything the humans had ever seen. The aliens had come to wipe out Earth's last hope. They had no idea what was coming. "We're outnumbered," said Lieutenant Sarah Myers, her voice trembling. She had never seen such large ships. "We won't survive this." James looked out at the enemy fleet, a feeling of calm settling over him. They were outgunned, outmanned, and outmatched. But he wasn't about to give up. "All systems are green," the ship's AI called Echo reported. "Weapons are ready." James nodded. "Let's show them what we're made of." The humans didn't have the firepower of the enemy ships, but what they did have was something the aliens hadn't counted on: unpredictability. The junk ship, once slow and clumsy, now moved like a shadow in the dark. Its strange design, built with old Earth technology and salvaged alien parts, gave it a unique advantage. It was faster than the enemy expected, and its old shields were stronger than anyone thought possible. As the alien warships opened fire, the humans fired back. The first shots missed, but the second wave hit their target. The ship's lasers were powerful, but it was the ship's unexpected movements that left the aliens confused. No one had ever seen a ship move like this. It was as if the ship itself knew where to go, where to strike, and where to dodge. The aliens began to panic. They couldn't track the ship's movements. They couldn't predict where it would strike next. Every attack from the humans hit its mark, and soon, the alien fleet was taking heavy damage. One by one, the enemy ships exploded, their massive forms breaking apart as the humans' junk ship danced around them. But it wasn't just the ship that was fighting. The humans themselves, ordinary men and women, had become a force of their own. James was calm, focused. His crew was working together like never before, each one knowing their role. There was no time for fear now. Only action. They had no backup, no reinforcements. It was them against an entire fleet, and they were determined to win. Within hours, the tide of the battle had shifted. The once mighty alien fleet had been reduced to wreckage, scattered throughout space. The junk ship, once thought useless, had torn through the enemy ships with ease. James couldn't believe it. "Did we do it?" he whispered to himself, staring at the battlefield. The ship, still battered and scarred, had somehow turned the impossible into victory. But something else was happening, something no one could explain. As the crew celebrated their unexpected win, Echo began to report strange readings. The ship's internal systems were working better than ever. The shields had recharged faster than they should have. The weapons were stronger, more accurate. And there was something else, something deep within the ship itself. Something old, ancient, and powerful. The humans had repaired the ship, yes, but they hadn't fixed it all. Some parts of the ship were not just broken, they were hiding something. Echo couldn't understand it. The ship's design was completely unlike any technology the galaxy had ever seen. It was as if the ship itself had a mind of its own. James stood in front of the control panel, his heart racing. He couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. They had fixed a ship that should have never worked, and now it was more than just a tool, it was a weapon, a living entity, something that could reshape the galaxy. The humans had gone from laughingstocks to a terrifying force in the blink of an eye. And now, the entire galaxy would learn the truth. The junk ship was no longer junk. It was something much, much more. And no one knew exactly how far its power would go. ASA, the crew set course for their next mission. One thing was clear. The galaxy would never look at the humans or their junk ship the same way again. The era of underestimating Earth was over. The humans had just begun, and they were ready for whatever came next. When the humans received their new spaceship, they thought it was a sign of hope. It was a massive, rusted hulk, falling apart at the seams. The alien race that gave it to Earth had no faith in humanity. They thought the ship was a joke, old, weak, and completely useless in the vastness of space. But the humans had no choice. They took it, patched it up as best as they could, and set out into the stars, unaware that they were about to unlock something beyond their understanding. Captain Emily Hayes stood on the bridge, staring at the ship's control panel. It was old, the buttons worn, the screens flickering. It looked like a piece of junk. But Emily knew there was no turning back now. They had to make this work. "Status report, Lieutenant?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Engines are functioning, but barely," Lieutenant Alan Reed replied. "Shields are weak, and weapons are non-operational. We'll have to rely on our old systems for now." Emily nodded, but she wasn't worried. The crew had done their best to repair the ship, and they had already faced far worse challenges than this. The ship might have been an embarrassment to the alien species, but to the humans, it was a chance to prove themselves. But as they traveled deeper into space, strange things began to happen. The ship, despite its broken state, started performing better than anyone could explain. The engines that had once sputtered now hummed smoothly. The systems that had been on the verge of failure suddenly came to life, working better than when they had first been repaired. "What's going on?" Alan asked, staring at the console as the ship's energy levels surged. "This doesn't make sense." Emily didn't know. There was no logical explanation. The ship had always been old, but now it was responding to their commands in ways it shouldn't have been able to. The systems weren't just repaired, they were improving. The ship was getting stronger, almost as if it was alive. Then, they received a distress signal. A nearby colony was under attack by a fleet of hostile alien ships. Emily didn't hesitate. They had no choice but to help. Their ship, though weak, might be the only hope the colony had. As they approached the colony, the sight of the alien fleet sent a chill down Emily's spine. The alien ships were massive, far more advanced than their own. Their weapons could tear through the human ship in seconds. But Emily wasn't afraid. Something in her gut told her this was no ordinary ship. It wasn't just a junk heap, it was something more. "We're outnumbered," Alan said, his voice tense. "If we engage them directly, we'll be destroyed." But Emily looked at the ship's control panel again, and something caught her eye. The power levels were rising higher than they should have been. The ship's energy reserves were full, even though they hadn't been able to charge it fully. The ship was drawing energy from somewhere no one could explain. "We fight," she said, her voice firm. "We have no choice." As the battle began, the human ship moved in ways no one could have predicted. The alien fleet, which had expected an easy victory, found themselves struggling. The human ship, though clumsy and old, was somehow outmaneuvering them. It darted through their fire with surprising speed, its weapons hitting targets with deadly accuracy. "What is happening?" Alan shouted as the enemy ships began to fall one by one. This shouldn't be possible. The ship was fighting like it had a mind of its own. Its movements were unpredictable, as though it was anticipating the alien fleet's every move. The shields, once weak, held up against the heaviest fire. Every shot fired by the human ship hit its mark, each blast tearing through the enemy ships with devastating force. As the last alien ship exploded in a burst of light, Emily stood in awe. They had done it. They had won. The enemy fleet had been completely destroyed. But something didn't feel right. The ship, once a laughingstock, had become a weapon of unimaginable power. And no one knew how. The crew looked at each other, stunned and confused. "What just happened?" Alan asked, still trying to process the victory. Emily felt the same way. The ship had transformed, but how? It was as if the ship had awakened, harnessing a power they didn't understand. The alien race that had given them the ship hadn't prepared them for this. They hadn't even known the ship could do this. The AI system, which had been a simple program at first, began speaking in a calm, strange voice. "Power levels have stabilized. The ship's systems are at maximum efficiency. You have unlocked the ship's true potential." "Unlocked?" Emily repeated, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean? How did we unlock it?" "The ship was designed with a purpose," the AI explained. "A purpose that you have now activated. It was never just a ship. It is an ancient weapon, hidden for eons, waiting for the right moment to be awakened. You have unlocked its true power." Emily's heart raced. This was no ordinary spaceship. It was an ancient artifact, a weapon of unimaginable power, waiting for the humans to discover it. And now they had. But what did this mean for the galaxy? If their enemies knew the true power of this ship, they would come for it, come for them. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had unwittingly uncovered something far greater than they could have imagined. As the crew looked out at the stars, they realized that their lives had changed forever. The ship was no longer just a broken-down relic. It was a weapon, an ancient power that had been waiting for them. And now, they had to figure out how to use it. But they knew one thing for sure. They were no longer just humans. They were something far more dangerous. And the galaxy would soon know their name. The spaceship was supposed to be a symbol of humanity's first step into the stars. Instead, it was a laughable pile of rust and broken technology. The aliens had given it to Earth as a gift, but it was clear they didn't believe the humans could ever use it for anything meaningful. The ship was a relic, old, damaged, and practically useless. They called it the junk, and the aliens were sure that's all it would ever be. Captain Alex Harper stood in front of the control panel, fingers resting on the flickering console. The ship, an old warship of alien design, barely responded. Its systems were broken, and the technology was outdated by centuries. The engines barely started, and the shields? Non-existent. It was a ship meant to be scrap. "Are we really going to fly this thing?" Lieutenant Marquin asked, staring at the dashboard as if waiting for it to explode. "We don't have a choice," Alex replied, a trace of doubt creeping into his voice. They had been left with no better option. They needed to prove themselves in space, to show the galaxy that Earth wasn't a joke. But how could they do that in a ship that couldn't even hold its own against an asteroid? "We're ready to go," the ship's AIA, cold voice named Echo, said. "Systems online." "Mostly," Alex sighed, glancing at Mara. "Mostly." But the feeling of dread was inescapable. They were the laughingstock of the galaxy, and this ship, this junk, was the only thing they had. It barely functioned, but it was their lifeline. But as the ship moved further into space, something strange began to happen. The sensors, which had been malfunctioning, suddenly began to pick up strange energy readings. The ship's systems, though old, began to stabilize. The engine, which had sputtered and groaned earlier, hummed smoothly. The lights on the ship flickered, but then they remained steady. "Did you see that?" Mara asked, her voice trembling. "The ship. It's working." "I know," Alex said, frowning. "But how?" No one could explain it. The ship, though it should have fallen apart by now, was suddenly functioning far better than it had any right to. The power levels began to rise on their own. The weapons, once useless, were now fully charged. The shields, barely operational before, were now fully active. "What is going on?" Mara whispered, her eyes wide. The ship, the junk, had come alive. They hadn't done anything differently. They hadn't repaired anything significant. And yet, the ship was transforming before their eyes, like something ancient had been awakened deep within it. It wasn't just responding to their commands. It was anticipating them. It was as though the ship had a mind of its own. A mind that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for something or someone to activate it. Just then, the ship's AI spoke again, its voice now deeper, more resonant. "The ship is now at full capacity. Systems are optimized. Preparing for engagement? Engagement?" Alex repeated. "What do you mean, engagement?" The AI's voice was calm, yet it sent a chill down his spine. "Incoming threat detected. Alien fleet, 12 ships." The crew scrambled to the windows, looking out into the vast emptiness of space. And there they were, a fleet of alien warships, much larger than anything the humans had. They were closing in fast, their weapons charged and ready. "Are we ready for this?" Mara asked, panic rising in her voice. Before Alex could respond, the ship moved on its own, faster than he thought possible. The junk was evading enemy fire, twisting and turning in ways that no ship of its design could have managed. It was as if the ship knew where the alien ships would strike before they even fired. "Hold on!" Alex shouted as the ship darted through the enemy fleet, weaving between explosions and fire. The crew barely had time to brace themselves as the ship's weapons opened fire, deadly, accurate, and devastating. The first alien ship exploded in a fiery ball. Then the second and the third. The junk's guns weren't just shooting randomly. They were hitting the most vulnerable spots on each enemy ship. "How are we doing this?" Mara gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. "This ship. It's fighting for us." Alex didn't know how or why, but he wasn't about to question it. The junk was no longer a ship, it was a weapon, alive and fighting to protect them. The alien fleet, once so confident in their power, was now scrambling. They hadn't anticipated the humans would be able to put up such a fight. The junk, which should have been a joke, was now tearing through their ships with precision and speed. It was as though the ship itself had decided it was time for humanity to rise. Within minutes, the alien fleet had been destroyed, their ships scattered in debris across the dark void of space. The crew stood in stunned silence. They had won. Against all odds, against a force far stronger than they were, they had won. "What just happened?" Mara whispered, her voice barely audible. "How did we defeat them?" Alex stared out the window, still in shock. The junk, now glowing with an otherworldly energy, hovered silently in space. It was no longer just a broken-down ship. It had become something far more powerful, something that wasn't supposed to exist. "I don't know," Alex said, his voice filled with awe. "But I think we've just awakened something ancient. Something no one knew about." The ship was alive, and it had chosen them. But what did that mean for the future of humanity? They had just won their first battle, but the galaxy was a vast, dangerous place. If other races discovered what had happened, they would come for them. The junk that had once been a symbol of humanity's failure had now become a powerful force to be reckoned with. And no one knew how far this power would go or what would happen when others learned the truth. For the first time, Alex felt a sense of fear. The junk wasn't just alive, it was more than they could control. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. But now, humanity had something far greater than anyone could ever imagine. The junk that was once considered useless was now a weapon, a force of nature. And it was alive.